What is going on, guys? Justin here, back again with another video. Man, it's been a few weeks since the last upload, but that is because I've been working on every single Easter egg, reference and detail in Spider-Man Dimension Rift, and there's a lot to go through here. That's why there's no actual number of how many there are, because there's too many to count. But I'm not going to waste your guys' time, we're just going to get straight into it. So, in the very first fight of Dimension Rift, you'll notice that Ben Reilly's webbing hand gesture is actually upside down, which is something Spider-Man actually does in the comics and some artwork as well. I thought I'd apply this for Ben Reilly's character in the film to show that he has a different style of fighting, and Peter's webbing hand gesture remains normal. So the fight starts at the same location as in the Spider-Man stealth mission final battle. So this is Ben Reilly's version of that final battle. He lands in the same spot when he jumps like Peter did in Stealth Mission, showing that these are the same events, but just a bit different. Same thing for when Peter gets hit into the climbing net in Stealth Mission. Ben Reilly falls over to where that is, but he doesn't hit it. It's just to show that the fight is very similar in a lot of ways, but it's different enough to notice, because these are different characters and different variants in a different universe. In the Ben and Snordore variant fight, they're trying to make a deal at the end, just like Peter and Snordore did in Stealth Mission, except this time Ben is the one that is knocked down, and Snordore has an advantage to get away, which makes it harder for Ben to convince him. Unlike in Stealth Mission, Peter is the one who successfully knocks Snordore down, and he becomes more vulnerable about his past and reasonings for trying to steal the serum, and finally they come to an agreement. So everything between the two timelines is very similar, but there are slight differences which results in different outcomes. And the original Snordore leaves through the portal on good terms, while the Snordore variant leaves through the portal on bad terms. So it's sort of like a mirror of these two scenes, like the same things are happening but they're slightly different. A cool detail when the Snordore variant leaves is that when he opens the portal it glitches, and obviously this is because of, you know, it's interlinking with another universe, but the portal glitching is supposed to be sort of a reference to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse, with all of the glitching effects that you can see and all that sort of stuff. So I thought that'd be a really neat detail for when the Snordore variant opens his portal. After the Galroad Productions intro plays, the opening scene is the exact same scene from the end of Spider-Man Stealth Mission, but it's been entirely reshot in higher quality. After Snordore and Peter leave the scene, the camera starts to move towards that brick wall where the portal had opened up, and we can hear different echoes of familiar sounding voices, and some unfamiliar ones too. The first voice we hear is Aunt May's line from Spider-Man Preliminary.
What you're doing is dangerous. What you're doing is dangerous.
The second one is from another Spider-Man fan film called Spider-Man Collapse of the Spider-Verse, where another multiversal fan film, Peter Parker, says this line to Doc Ock.
What did you do? Otto, what did you do?
And if you don't know this guy, his name is TJ Channels, another Spider-Man fan film creator on the platform. He also voiced one of the thugs at the very end of this film.
Oh, come on, don't be a wuss, we can take him.
The third voice we hear is Snordore's line from the Spider-Man Stealth Mission final battle.
Still a child, aren't you? Still a child, aren't you?
The fourth one we hear is Ben Reilly's line from later on in the film, where he says this to Peter.
He murdered him right in front of my eyes. After Chameleon was done with Peter for the cloning process, he didn't have a use for Peter anymore, and he murdered him right in front of my eyes.
The fifth one we hear is Peter's line from Spider-Man Stealth Mission final battle.
Well, that's a part of my charm, isn't it?
Well, that's a part of my charm, isn't it?
But that's part of my charm, isn't it?
The sixth one we hear the voice of Doc Ock from Spider-Man Collapse of the Spider-Verse, where he explains the multiverse to Peter Parker.
The further back you go, the more different the universes get. The further back you go, the more different the universes get. The more different the choices, the more different you yourself is in that particular universe.
The seventh one we hear is The Punisher from Albert Carson's Spider-Man vs. Punisher fan film.
How can I not fight for them? To destroy all the evil that arises. This is what I do. I can't stop.
And the last voice we hear is Ben Reilly, once again saying his line from the opening of this film, but these are actually two different takes of that line.
Hand over the serum, Snordore.
Hand over the serum, Snordore!
The scene where Aunt May and Peder are watching Roy News is another entirely reshot scene from Stealth Mission, but this time it's extended to be a part of the rest of the film, showing the continuation of the scene. Except this continuation is actually a retcon, considering this was never planned to have been a scene that we got to see more of in Spider-Man Stealth Mission. Not many people will pick this reference up, but after Peder has a shower, he puts on this yellow jacket that is supposed to be a reference to Peder's academic decathlon jacket from Spider-Man Homecoming, as well as the yellow jacket that Peder sometimes wears in the comics. We once again see Edith, which was previously featured in Spider-Man Stealth Mission and Spider-Man Preliminary. And obviously the fact that Edith was in those films in the first place was because it was meant to be a reference to Spider-Man Far From Home. As Peder and Joseph meet each other in the park, it's really hard to see in this shot, but Joseph is actually wearing this t-shirt that says character development, which he also wears at the end of the film when he says goodbye to Peder, giving a little nod to his character developing throughout the film. So it only makes sense for him to wear it at the start and at the end of the film only. This wasn't originally planned, but Marcus decided to wear it specifically for the movie, which ended up being a really cool and funny detail. When Peder and Joseph are talking to each other about Peter's Spider-Man suit, we get a line from Joseph saying,
"Yeah, I know, but it still looks..."
"I swear, if you say it looks like pajamas," which is a reference to Joseph calling out Peder on his first homemade suit, saying it looks like pajamas in Spider-Man Preliminary.
To be fair, they're starting to look like pajamas.
We get a 1 week time jump and we see that Peder is in a different outfit. Now, this green jacket isn't the exact same as the one in Stealth Mission, but it is supposed to be the same one in the story. But back in 2023, when I did the Q&A for this film before it came out, I got a comment where someone said that it actually looks a lot like the jacket that Peter Parker wears in the first Amazing Spider-Man film, which I can definitely see. I didn't even think of this, so thanks to the person who pointed that out. After Peder hears about the portal on the news, he quickly rushes to the location where the civilians are taking pictures and videos of this thing in the sky. And if you didn't notice, this is the same location from Spider-Man Preliminary where Peder is looking for Chameleon and finds the tracker that he had planted on the car. Another detail in this scene, you may or may not recognize him, but this guy right here is the same civilian that Spidey saved from the bullies in Spider-Man Preliminary, to which he has this funny line after Spider-Man leaves the location.
"You know, he saved me once. We're like best friends."
This guy right here, his name is Liam, and he actually plays the Snordore variant in this film.
What's up, guys?
Secret identity reveal, Snordore variant is revealed to be the random citizen that's standing in his phone in that one scene.
That one scene, yeah. That was Snordore the whole time. Gotcha.
We're just keeping watching. And the guy in the background is actually my brother, who plays Slyde and Phil Coulson in the film as well. Next up, we have this scene where Chameleon, disguised as Peder, enters Peder and May's home. May gives him a cookie and Peder passes out, and it's revealed to be Chameleon. This scene was actually based off of one of the comics where this exact situation plays out. In the film, it's a peanut butter cookie that the real Peder eats earlier on in the film, and he doesn't like it, but when fake Peder comes in, he starts acting weird, so Aunt May makes a smart move by asking fake Peder if he'd like to have one of those cookies again, instead of asking, would you like to try one? Because if Chameleon heard May say try, he would put 2 and 2 together and realise that Peder probably didn't like the cookie. So by May asking if he'd like to have another one, that makes Chameleon think that Peder had already had a cookie and enjoyed it. Of course, he says, yeah, sure May. May gives him a normal cookie first, just to be sure, and he enjoys the cookie. So this gives May a sign that this isn't the real Peder, considering he all of a sudden likes peanut butter. So it's supposed to make the audience assume that May uses maybe a crushed up sleeping pill of some kind. I didn't think of that all the way through when writing the script, but in the comic version, it's an almond cookie instead of a peanut butter cookie, and she does drug Chameleon with Mary Jane's Ambien in the cookie, which is a type of sleeping pill. Just like the comic, Peder is starting to stutter and eventually falls to the ground, revealing Chameleon, and Aunt May in the comics knits a piece of cloth that says "Gotcha" on it. Although in the film version of this scene, it's a little less intense compared to the comics, as Peder rushes home in the comics by smashing through the window whilst wearing the Iron Spider suit. But in the film version, he just runs inside with his normal suit on, of course. Just a couple of details in this scene too. Fake Peder picks up the Spider-Man pop vinyl of the homemade suit from Spider-Man Homecoming, which was previously featured in the Spider-Man Christmas special as a present from Aunt May to Peder. This next detail was by all means unintended to be in the movie. This was not planned at all, but ended up being a really nice touch in the end. So this drawing in the background that says "Technology Takeover" was a piece of art that my brother did, and the reason it works so well for this scene is because, well, this Peder is fake, and it's actually Chameleon using technology to disguise as him. Therefore, it's like technology has taken over Chameleon to make him appear as Peder. As I said, unintentional, but worked really well in the end anyway. These next few details were also completely unintentional. A lot of them seem to be. But when Peder rushes back home to see Chameleon, you can see a picture of Aunt May and Uncle Ben on the wall, which are just my parents in real life. A picture of Peder in the same outfit he wears in Spider-Man Stealth Mission, which is just a picture I got taken during COVID in 2020. And lastly, this picture of Aunt May, which is actually the same picture that's in Peder's wallet in Spider-Man Preliminary that Chameleon later uses to disguise as her in the film. And from what I remember, that photo was actually taken specifically for Spider-Man Preliminary for that scene. Intentional or not, these details end up working really well in the film. Next up, we get introduced to Slyde in the film, and his suit looks a little different to his suit in Spider-Man Preliminary, because this time it's black and yellow, and it's based off of his suit in the 2017 Spider-Man TV show. Not only that, but this time his suit also has some upgrades.
I created an experimental substance, covered my suit all over with it, and it eliminates the friction between the suit and other surfaces.
Yes, this is something from the comics too. Not only does he have a new suit, but he also actually talks in the film, and the sound of his voice is very much inspired by the way his voice sounds in the 2017 Spider-Man TV show as well.
Hey Spidey, ready for round 2? Huh, that's funny.
I only believe that what goes around comes around, and this city is gonna rightfully pay for what it did to Slyde.
After Peder and Coulson have their little discussion, Peder walks away from the car, and you can see a fake number plate that reads L30Y CR5N, which in normal letters would be LBOYCRSN, which is short for Owlboy Carson, which is obviously the YouTube channel Owlboy Carson, mainly run by Lucas Carson and his brother Landon. And if you've watched this film and don't know this, Lucas plays the Scarlet Spider in this movie. During Slyde and Spidey's fight, Slyde runs around Peder really fast like a vortex, which is reminiscent of a scene from the Spider-Man show as well.
Scheme, at least have the courtesy to explain it. You must be really new at this.
When Spidey and Slyde have their first section of fighting in this film, Slyde runs off and Peder goes to look for him. Peder goes, "Hello, oh, echo, 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 echo."
Hello, oh. Echo, echo, echo.
And this is something I did on purpose as a reference to what the Spot says in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Hello! Hello, echo, echo, echo. No echo.
After some time of Peder looking for Slyde, Slyde jump scares him and Peder bolts away in panic knowing that he can't match the speed of Slyde. When Slyde is chasing Peder, we get this shot where the camera follows Peder and quickly pans to Slyde, then follows Slyde. We also get a shot like that later in the film when Slyde chases Peder in their second fight in the film. Now, I know a lot of action films have probably done shots like this before, but the only reason I wanted to include a shot like this is because I wanted to take inspiration specifically from one of the action sequences from Captain America Civil War where Cap, Bucky and Black Panther are all running. As I said, I know a lot of movies have probably done this before, but I like to take inspiration from a lot of Marvel films specifically, so I think it counts as a reference. After their first full fight in the movie, Peder gets a call from Joseph with this ringtone.
Hello?
which is the same Spider-Man theme ringtone that Peter has in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And it was also in Spider-Man Preliminary when Peter gets called on the Edith glosses by Joseph as well. The next little detail we can see in S.H.I.E.L.D. HQ, just as Peter enters through the door, Phil Coulson is looking at some footage of Snordore opening a bunch of portals, which he's about to talk to Peter about, and it's just footage from Spider-Man Stealth Mission and Spider-Man Preliminary, and he pulls up this footage on the hologram, and later shows this footage of the portal, which is actually footage from the post-credit scene of the Spider-Man Christmas special. During the Chameleon interrogation scene in Uncle Ben's garage, we learn that Chameleon has been behind Peter's back this entire time, testing his abilities and studying his power. And this is actually something that Chameleon does in the comics as well as the 2017 TV show. Although in the TV show he studies his abilities to mimic his actions and sort of recreate his powers, sort of like Taskmaster.
Maybe you aren't as smart as my studies of you indicated, Spider-Man.
You were studying me? The hard drive back at your warehouse.
Found that, did you? No matter. You see, as a master of disguise, I've been in and out of the Daily Bugle for weeks, learning about you. The places you're most likely to be found, what kind of crimes you show up to fight. I do my research.
That's just because you didn't know where to look.
Let me out of here! Spider-Man is on his way to make a killing.
No sudden moves, friends. Your friendly neighborhood web shooters in a frisky mood.
But in Dimension Rift, it was so Chameleon could see his level of skill and try to become stronger than Peter. So if Peter refused to join his team, Chameleon would know he's strong enough to take Peter down if Peter tried to take him down. It's a lot to explain, but it is explained in the film. The whole testing Spider-Man's power thing is shown in flashbacks of Spider-Man Preliminary, but believe it or not, this was all retconned. It wasn't originally planned that Chameleon got Spider-Man to whip his car to test his power, or to morph into Joseph and punch Peter in the face to test his durability and strength. It was all retconned for him to do it for that reason, just for the plot and the story of this film. When Peter is talking to Joseph on the hologram, he asks Joseph to go to Chameleon's lair and retrieve the same handcuffs that Peter got electrocuted in Spider-Man Preliminary. This is so Peter is able to use the power that's in them to hook them up to his web shooters and his new suit to make taser webs and electrocute Chameleon so he can shut down his newly made morphing technology. And after Peter tells Joseph about the handcuffs, Joseph and Peter say,
Using their own tech to destroy their own tech. I like your thinking.
Yep, and hey, I might even be able to use some of that tech for some gadgets on my own. Which is a reference to Peter Parker using the villain's tech to make his own gadgets in the Spider-Man PS4 game.
Lots of high-tech equipment. Maybe later I can recycle this stuff into some weapons of my own.
This is another unintentional Easter egg, but after the Chameleon interrogation, Slyde shows up to distract Peter, and Peter goes to leave the garage, and you can see Peter's bike, the same one that he rides in the opening scene for Spider-Man Stealth Mission, which is just my bike in real life. And fun fact, there was a deleted scene from Spider-Man Preliminary where there was going to be a second post-credit scene, where it was a reshot version of the opening scene to Spider-Man Stealth Mission, but it was cut because I thought it felt a little unnecessary. Peter runs out of the door and the camera moves towards this hole in the door. It's a bit hard to see, but how convenient. It has some cobwebs in the frame with Spider-Man. Totally unintentional, but looks cool. So this whole fight scene between Peter and Chameleon, we call it the backyard fight because, well, it takes place in Peter and May's backyard. And it's also where Peter fought the Shocker in Spider-Man Christmas Special. After watching Lucas's reaction video to Dimension Rift, I think it's safe to call the backyard a
iconic location.
So just before the fight starts, Chameleon is disguising as Spider-Man, but in two different suits of his. First, the stealth suit, which Peter previously wore in Stealth Mission, and the homemade suit, which Peter previously wore in Spider-Man Preliminary. And then we get this.
Stop.
The classic Spider-Man pointing meme, which I knew I had to do for this film.
That man's an imposter. That man is the imposter.
Now after that, Peder fights Chameleon whilst he's morphed as Peder, like a Spider-Man vs Spider-Man fight, which is supposed to be a callback to Spider-Man Preliminary where we get to see a little bit of this. But back then, it was done in front of a green screen and it's both me in the suit. But this time, it was much easier to pull off as a full fight scene because my brother was the one wearing the other suit and we're similar in height and build, so it was actually real. And then of course, I just did the voiceover later. After Chameleon disappears using his tech, Peder goes into full Spidey sense focus mode. And this is very much inspired by the scene from Spider-Man No Way Home in the condo when Peder is sensing the switch from Norman Osborn's A Green Goblin.
What's wrong?
I don't know.
May?
This next detail is a really tiny one, and I don't think anyone would have picked it up when watching the film. But this big punch that Chameleon goes for, Peder dodges it, and we get a close-up of Chameleon's fist hitting the wall. Very similar to how in Spider-Man Preliminary, when Chameleon goes to punch Peder in the final battle, Peder dodges it, and we get this close-up of his fist hitting the bench. During Peder and Chameleon's fight in the backyard, we get this scene of Peder punching Chameleon's helmet. And Peder feels a bit of pain in his fist from punching it because I guess he didn't really expect it to hurt. But in the final battle, we get to see Peder punch his helmet again, but this time, Peder isn't fazed. This is because Peder has a little more rage and strength underneath that mask that he doesn't really care. And also to think of it, this is his updated suit, so he could have learned from that mistake and added some padding underneath those gloves. Not only that, but Peder does punch Chameleon's helmet again later on in the final battle, and he's very much in rage. After Chameleon knocks Peder down, we get these words between the two.
Come on, Peder. Stop holding back.
Well, come on then.
Chameleon knows that Peder is stronger than he lets on, and he knows that Peder pulls his punches. Peder, in anger, yells, "Well, come on then," so he can try to show Chameleon his potential and not to mess with him. In the final battle, we get a direct callback to the scene, but the roles are reversed.
Come on, Chameleon. Stop holding back.
Well, come on then.
This time, it's Peder telling Chameleon to stop holding back because Peder is in a lot of rage at this point, which makes him feel stronger, and now he isn't pulling his punches. And he wonders to himself, "Come on, Chameleon, where's all that strength you claim to have?" And Chameleon responds out of anger, "Well, come on then," just like Peder, to show him that he can really beat the shit out of him when he gets the chance, which he later does. Now, pay attention to this detail. After the two of them have their fight in the backyard, Chameleon moves Peder out of the way by getting him on the other side of the gate and then shutting the gate in his face, which sets him up to have to face off against Slyde, who's waiting for him on the other side. Then, in the final battle when Peder is fighting Slyde, Slyde moves Peder out of his way by getting him on the other side of the layered door and then shutting the door in his face, which sets him up to have to face off against Chameleon, who's waiting for him on the other side.
Peder!
This shows that when the two are working as a team, they know how to do it good, and in the backyard fight, it results in Peder having to face off both of them at the same time when Chameleon shows up afterwards, just like in the final battle, it results in Peder having to face off both of them when Slyde shows up. When they work well as a team, it usually results in Peder having to fight both of them at the same time. And you know what the most mind-blowing part of this big detail is? It was completely unintentional. I know, right? Crazy. I only found out that these scenes mirrored each other when I was in the middle of editing, and my brother pointed it out and said that the scene in the final battle was very much like the one in the backyard fight, and I was like, wow, that's such a good unintended detail. I never even realised that, but hey, it worked out perfectly. Now this next detail is supposed to be something that is noticed throughout the film, but during Peder and Slyde's fight at Peder's place, Peder says this.
Come on, Slyde. You have to stop doing this. Chameleon is out of his mind and he's taking this way too far. You have to stop.
And when I was reading some of the comments on the movie, I had someone or a couple of people say that when Slyde turned on Chameleon and decided to become a better person, that it felt random and out of the blue. But if you've watched the movie, you'll know that Peder tries to convince Slyde to have a change of heart way more than once in the movie.
Come on, Slyde. You have to stop doing this. Slyde, if you worked this hard at a regular job, you wouldn't have to be going through all of this trouble. Slyde, is this really the team that you want to be a part of? Slyde, come on, man. You really got to let go of this team. I'm not telling you again. All of this is affecting people's lives and the universe. Multiple universes at that.
We even get these shots of Slyde rethinking his decisions during the scene where Chameleon is about to murder Joseph in front of everybody, and after Chameleon says he'll kill everyone Peder loves.
Come on, Peder. It's just one decision. But don't you try anything, because if you do, I will kill everyone you love right in front of you. No exceptions.
And we get this scene in the final battle of Slyde stalling before he fights Peder.
What are you waiting for? Go after him!
And this shot of him stalling, not attacking Peder at all. He lets Peder run off to go against Chameleon because he's starting to realise that he's not going to gain anything from being a part of Chameleon's team. So I really don't think it was out of the blue at all. Peder trying to convince Slyde to change were hints that Slyde was going to make the right decision at one point or another. Last but not least, when Chameleon is punching the absolute shit out of Peder, we get a Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker moment here between Slyde and Peder. Lucas said this himself when he reacted to the film.
You know, this reminds me a lot of like Darth Vader seeing Luke get electrocuted by the Emperor, and he's just silently standing there and like having this mental conflict of like whether he should or shouldn't help. And so I think Slyde is going to be that Darth Vader figure. Like you can feel it, right? I can feel it coming.
Anyway, let's get back to where we were, shall we? Now, during Peder and Slyde's fight in Peder's yard, we get this line from Peder.
Slyde, if you worked this hard at a regular job, you wouldn't have to be going through all of this trouble.
This line works for the story, but it was also a direct reference to one of Peder's lines in the Spider-Man PS4 game.
More of them? Guys, if you worked this hard at a legit job, you wouldn't need to be criminals.
The line in the script was originally going to be directly one for one from the game, but it was changed to be a little more original. This next tiny detail is probably one no one noticed at all, and I don't blame anyone if they didn't notice it because you wouldn't think it would be intended. But we get this line from Chameleon before they're about to fight again.
Someone who doesn't give up.
We'll see about that.
This line is supposed to be a little callback to his line in Spider-Man Preliminary.
I won't let you.
I guess we'll see.
And it's really just supposed to show that Chameleon is confident that he's right about whatever he's talking about. Like in Spider-Man Preliminary, Chameleon says, "Anyways, I've got another bank to rob." Peder says, "I won't let you." And Chameleon responds with, "I guess we'll see." And since we know that Chameleon in the final battle wasn't actually the real Chameleon, Chameleon would have successfully robbed more banks after what he said without Peder knowing about it. And in Spider-Man Dimension Rift, Chameleon says, "What are you without your powers?" Peder says, "Someone who doesn't give up." Chameleon responds with, with, we'll see about that. And once again, Chameleon was right in his mind. In the scene where he's about to shoot Joseph, he's able to break Peder, and Peder literally gives up in that scene and has to end up joining Chameleon after refusing multiple times to do so.
Okay, I'll join you. I'll join you.
See? That wasn't so hard, was it?
This is leaning into a bit of a different topic of the film now, but Peder isn't a perfect superhero, and there will be times where he breaks and might give up, but it depends on the reason. He is a good person who will do anything to protect his friends and family, and Peder did this before even knowing that Ben Reilly existed, before knowing that there was someone there to help him. He really was just going to be a part of the team, and he really was going to have to figure all of this out on his own. If you take Ben Reilly out of the equation, is there a chance Peder would have been able to take down all three villains by himself? Well, you've got a guy who can shapeshift into anyone he wants and disappear, someone with super speed and a suit where Spider-Man's webs aren't even able to stick to it, and someone who can teleport, shoot lasers, and open portals. So it is a possibility, but the chances of Peder being able to take down them all is pretty low. Even with Slyde turning on Chameleon in the end, super speed isn't as powerful against someone who can turn invisible and someone who can teleport and open portals to anywhere. But then again, since Ben Reilly and the Snordore variant are from the same universe, if there's no Ben Reilly, there's no Snordore variant. So in the end, Ben Reilly kind of has to show up at some point. So if Ben Reilly and the Snordore variant weren't there, Peder would have only had to fight Chameleon and Slyde. Anyway, let's get back to where we were. I kind of rambled on for a bit there, leading into different topics of the film. Alright, so, Peder's just had a little fight with Chameleon and Slyde. Peder is knocked down. Chameleon and Slyde leave to set Peder up, and we get this shot of the side of Chameleon's car, of the door shutting, which is very similar to the shot in Spider-Man Preliminary, where it's a side shot of the door opening where Chameleon gets out of the car. So, Joseph has just arrived to the lair to look for these handcuffs, and when he gets inside the lair, you can very clearly see Chameleon and Slyde's helmets. But these aren't just any ordinary helmets, these are the helmets from Spider-Man Preliminary, because as we know, they both have new suits in the film, and if you look closely, you can see some duct tape on both sides of the old Chameleon helmet, showing that this thing has been through some shit in between the time jump of Spider-Man Preliminary and Dimension Rift. Who knows, maybe this is what caused it. Another thing you can see in the lair is the same forklift that Peder was sitting on in Spider-Man Preliminary, where he had his hands in the handcuffs. And fun fact, in this very scene, as you know Joseph is looking for those handcuffs, there was a deleted / alternate version of the scene where he finds the handcuffs, but he actually finds them hanging on the forklift. This is what was originally in the script, but was later changed in the final cut because Marcus, the guy who plays Joseph, suggested it would be a cool idea that near the end, Joseph would be fed up with trying to find them and would kick a bucket that's on the ground and the handcuffs would fly out. I ended up liking this idea much better, and I think it works nicely in the final cut. In the shot where Joseph picks up the Chameleon helmet, you can see some antlers and bones hanging from the ceiling. This was not at all intended to be a detail whatsoever, but in the filmmaking world, you could definitely say that these antlers are from Kraven the Hunter, storing the remains of his prey in Chameleon's lair. Let's not forget that Chameleon and Kraven are half-brothers in the comics. In this universe, maybe Chameleon and Kraven are on reasonable terms with each other. A bro helps a bro out by letting him display his catches in the lair. So, Peder just met the Snordore variant for the first time, and at some point during the fight, Peder webs Snordore's glove, and Snordore shoots a laser down through the web, and it stuns Peder. Very similar to when Peder uses taser webs, specifically the scene where Peder tasers Chameleon in the final battle.
Do it.
Activate.
Even though Peder had plans to make taser webs by hooking up the electrical handcuffs to his web shooters, this probably would have motivated him to do it even more. So if something like this were to happen again, his webs would be electric proof. I do wish I would have included a scene where Peder fights the Snordore variant again in the final battle and has an advantage this time around, where Snordore tries to stun him again but it doesn't work, but I wanted to keep the Spider-Man fighting their own villains because that's who they're familiar with the most, and they both have their own missions to complete and have their own beef with them. During the fight between Peder and the Snordore variant, Peder is able to dodge a lot of Snordore's laser blasts, probably because he knows what to expect after fighting his own variant of Snordore. But you can only dodge so many, because at the end of their fight we get a camera shot of Peder's point of view and Snordore punches Peder in the face and the camera cuts to black. And this is like a slight foreshadow of what's about to happen to Joseph later on, when Chameleon tricks Joseph while he's shapeshifted as Peder.
For now, have a good nap.
But if you notice, when Peder gets knocked out, you can hear this ringing noise. This indicates that Peder hasn't been fully knocked out, but just really dizzy, and he wakes up just within a few seconds. But when Joseph gets knocked out, there isn't any sound, and it just cuts straight to black. It's really showing the difference between having superpowers and being a regular human being. Joseph got knocked out with a gun and got knocked out straight away, and when we see him later he still looks really out of it. But when Peder got knocked out with Snordore's powered up glove, he woke up very quickly and was very awake, which really shows the strength and durability that Spider-Man actually has. And obviously the reason why Snordore was able to disappear so quickly is because he would have just opened up a portal and went straight to the lair. Just some slight details to point out when Chameleon is morphed as Peder is that when the real Peder runs off to find Joseph, you'd think that he'd be running into the lair to get there as quickly as possible to make sure he's okay. But when we see Peder arrive, he's just walking and checking behind his back for some reason. Because obviously, as you know, this is actually Chameleon making sure that Peder isn't onto him yet. And when we see the real Peder arriving, he's rushing, he's running as fast as possible, but it's too late. Now, whenever I was watching in the live chat premiere, I don't think anyone at all suspected this was Chameleon when the scene started playing, and I think I know why. Well, if you pay close attention, the moment Peder zips off screen to find Joseph, it cuts straight to a shot of the big portal in the sky, showing that it's expanding, and it lingers on this shot for a few seconds. Then it cuts to fake Peder arriving to the lair. Now, this shot of the portal wasn't originally in the script, and when I had edited this scene, that shot wasn't originally there, and when I was watching it back, something felt off. Let me know what these scenes are like if the portal shot isn't there.
Joseph. Joseph.
It feels like time has passed almost too quickly, and that the audience would focus on why Peder isn't running as fast as he can. And I thought, I feel like the audience is going to pick up on this too quickly. But when you add that shot of the portal in between, it distracts the audience away from the scene, showing them that the portal is expanding and that it's a threat. So they're left with that in their minds before the scene plays, and they don't even think about the fact that this is a fake Peder. It gives the audience something else to focus on, where they sort of forget that Chameleon can shapeshift, because the portal is something that can destroy the planet, much more threatening. I just love little details like this. So Peder rushes inside to see if Joseph is okay, and we just see Chameleon standing there, morphed back to his original form, and we get this scene of Peder saying this.
Is he alive?
And this is a direct inspiration from the scene from Loki Season 1.
How do you spell that? Is that with an I-E or just an I?
Is she alive?
It's such a small detail to take inspiration of, but I just loved Tom Hiddleston's acting in that scene, and I thought that line was perfect to take inspiration from for this scene, because Loki is desperately wanting to know if Sylvie is alive, and Peder is desperately wanting to know if Joseph is alive. I think it just works really well for this scene because of all of the threats that Chameleon has made in the film so far up to this point. Peder would really start to worry at this point in time. Speaking of this scene, I think it ended up being a cool reverse version of the scene from Spider-Man Preliminary, where in that film Joseph has to come and rescue Peder from Chameleon's lair, but in this film Peder has to come and rescue Joseph from the lair. Cool little parallel. Okay, there's this really cool detail in the scene where Slyde and Snordore walk out, which leaves Peder surrounded by the three villains. And it's that when Snordore comes out, you can see him slightly punch his fist into his palm. He also does this in the final battle when he's about to fight Ben Reilly. And the reason why I think this detail is so cool, because fun fact, in the final battle, this is Liam playing the character, as I said earlier, but in the scene in the lair, Liam wasn't available for this day, for the filming. So that's actually Marcus wearing that suit for that scene. Yep, that's secretly Joseph under there. And the thing is, when I was directing this film, I never told any of those two to punch their fist into their palm. It's like, once they put that suit on, they just both knew exactly how to be this character. And it honestly just worked out so well. But if you're wondering how in the scene where Joseph gets thrown to the ground by the Snordore variant, that's actually my brother Stephen wearing this suit, who plays Slyde, but Slyde wasn't in that shot where the Snordore variant throws Marcus, so it was easy to just quickly change suits for that part and then quickly change back. Actually, from my memory, that shot was actually the last shot we filmed, or one of the last shots we filmed of that shooting day. So Joseph is brought out and thrown to the floor by the Snordore variant, and Peder says this to Chameleon.
Son of a...
And the B word gets cut off by Snordore's punch to Peder's stomach. That line is supposed to be a direct callback to the scene in Spider-Man Preliminary where Chameleon says this.
No! You son of a...
Watch the language. And you may think, oh, but Justin, people saying you son of a bitch is really common in movies. That's too far-fetched to be a callback. The reason why I say it was a callback is because if you listen to what Peder says in the preliminary scene, he says this. Watch the language. And there was a deleted clip and Dimension Rift in this scene where Chameleon says in a funny voice, whoa, 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 watch the language. He's alive, isn't he? Well, at least for now, after Peder says, you son of a... But I cut it out of the film because this scene is meant to be dark, and I didn't want any funny scenes to take away from the tone of this scene. And guess what? I've still got that deleted clip on my computer, so I'll show you right now to prove that I'm not lying. Action.
Whoa, 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 watch the language. He's alive, isn't he? Well, at least for now.
So Peder and Joseph arrive back to Peder's place, and we get this unintended detail that I think my brother actually pointed out to me at some point. You can see some Christmas wrapping paper in the background and some Christmas mugs, the same ones that Peder and May have in the Spider-Man Christmas special. And we know that Dimension Rift takes place only around 4 days after the events of the Christmas special, so it would make sense that there would still be some Christmas stuff lying around still. And fun fact, there was a deleted scene where Peder would go up to the Christmas tree and take the chameleon decoration he made and he would rip it in half after what happened to Joseph. And that deleted clip was filmed whilst we were filming the Spider-Man Christmas special in preparation for Dimension Rift, but it was cut because it felt a little unnecessary to add it. The only reason this Christmas stuff is in the background in the first place is because these scenes were filmed during Christmas time in 2023, so around a year after we filmed the Christmas special. Okay, and now, Peder gets introduced to Ben Reilly, the Owlboy Carson. And as you guys know, that entire post-credit scene from Spider-Man Stealth Mission was entirely reshot for this movie because we're about 3 years older. And obviously we want the quality of the scene to actually match the camera quality, so yeah. Let's point out all of the differences. So in the Stealth Mission version, Peder's wearing just a normal outfit, and in the Dimension Rift version, he's wearing his Spider-Man suit and he has blood on his face because Obviously, I didn't plan the post-credit scene to have him wearing his suit, considering there was no Dimension Rift script that even existed yet. And when I did start writing the Dimension Rift script, this scene was supposed to be at the beginning of the movie, but I wanted it to be a bit different, so it takes place in the middle of the film instead. Oh, and this version of the scene in Dimension Rift is slightly different to the one in the Dimension Rift trailer, which instead was a version of this scene without blood on Peder's face. The Scarlet Spider suit has been remade and refined. My whole bedroom was repainted and it needed to be reshot anyway because the Dimension Rift version of the scene is literally an extension of the stealth mission version, talking about the story and what just happened before these very moments. Not only that, but in the stealth mission version, the shots of Scarlet Spider were all filmed at Lucas's house, and it was Lucas in the scene the entire time. But this time, when the mask is on, it's actually me in the suit and my brother at the end, but it's only Lucas when he takes the mask off and he's using a green screen. So yeah, a lot of planning went into making this scene feel right to actually give the effect that Ben Reilly is actually there standing in Peter's room. Now, for Ben Reilly's backstory, it takes elements from the comics, but it's also very original in terms of fitting with the Dimension Rift storyline. In the comics, Peter Parker is cloned by someone named Miles Warren, aka the Jackal, after having suspicions that Spider-Man had some form of involvement in the death of Gwen Stacy. I'm not going to get into that comic book storyline at the moment because I'm not entirely familiar with it, but yeah, it was changed completely for this movie so that Chameleon is the one who chooses to clone Peder in Ben Reilly's universe, and Peder refuses to join Chameleon earlier on in the timeline, and I'll tell you what I mean when I say earlier on in the timeline. It might start to get a little confusing here, but picture this: Spider-Man preliminary, but instead of me, it's Lucas, because this is Ben Reilly's universe. Chameleon robs the bank, Peder goes after him and discovers the lair. Peder calls Joseph and lets him know that he found the lair and sends the coordinates just like in preliminary. Peder gets captured by Slyde and is put in the electrical handcuffs. Now, excuse me for this terrible dialogue I made up on the spot, but instead of Chameleon saying, well, time to go rob another bank, he says something like, wow, I think I just hit the jackpot. You, my friend, have great power. You would be a fine asset to my team. If you help me rob banks, I'll pay you lots of money. Peder replies with, what? That's insane. I'll never join you. Chameleon would say something like, well, if you don't want everyone around you to die, I suggest you reconsider. Peder keeps refusing to join Chameleon, and then finally Joseph arrives to come rescue Peder just like in preliminary, but instead Chameleon is still there and Joseph is caught. Chameleon points a gun to Joseph's head and says, last chance Spider-Man, join me now or a bullet goes in his head. Joseph would say, don't join him Peder. Peder's like, we can get through this Joseph, I'm not gonna join him. And boom, Joseph dies, right in front of Peder's eyes. Peder is in shock and in rage. Chameleon says, what about now? And Peder yells, never, not after that. Chameleon dials up the electricity on the handcuffs and Peder passes out. Now, since this version of Chameleon uses other people's DNA to shapeshift, he had also learnt how to clone people. So since this version of Peder kept refusing again and again and again to join Chameleon's team, he shoved Peder in a test tube and cloned him. He did this thinking that the clone was going to join his team instead. He thought that this clone would obey his orders just because he made him. Then, Chameleon pulls Peder out of the test tube. Ben Reilly is created in the test tube and wakes up. He sees Chameleon walking over to Peder while Peder's on the floor and says, I tried to warn you Peder, but I've got no use for you anymore. And he murders Peder right in front of Ben Reilly. Ben is scared. He smashes his way out of the test tube using that spider strength and runs away, trying to figure out everything that just happened. Chameleon is pissed. Ben Reilly discovers he has powers, makes a suit. Chameleon is trying to find him. Ben makes a comeback and takes Chameleon down, and the rest is history. That was a lot to unpack. Funny thing is, this whole story was meant to be explained in Dimension Rift with flashbacks and whatnot, but it was cut from the script because the movie isn't about Ben Reilly, it's still about Peder. But yeah, if we were to do a spin-off short film about the Scarlet Spider, you could imagine it would be something like this. Alright, so after Ben Reilly leaves to scope out the lair, it's time for Peder to make his new suit. We get to see lots of drawings that Peder has done, and a suit design that Joseph left for Peder, sort of like a blueprint for him to work off of. but let's go through every single detail we can see here. So, starting off at the bottom left corner, we can see a note that says make suit, make new suit, and make newer suit. The first one is referring to Peder's very first homemade suit, the second one is referring to Peder's upgraded homemade suit, and the third one is referring to the new red and black suit he's about to make. And if you notice, the first two are actually scribbled out because he's already made those two suits, and the third one hasn't been scribbled out just yet. Next, we see the design of the suit that Joseph left for Peder, including all of the additional details and features that Peder needs to know about the suit. At the top of the suit, it says, suit will be made from thicker and more durable fabric, extra padding on shoulders. For the eyes, we see the frames of the eyes and the lens. For the frame, it says magnetic lenses, improved ventilation for breathing between combat. For the lens, it says improved heads-up display. Edith Network has updated features. Then, for the spider symbol, it says new spider symbol. Design is more striking. For the web shooters, it says new web shooters made from metal, stronger. For the boots, it says new boots with added zipper for easier suit up. Boots also include Velcro. And for the gloves, new gloves with better grip for improved wall climbing, double the strength. Now the last thing that's pretty cool is what it says at the very top. New Spider-Man suit, combination of standard suit and stealth suit. So this suit basically takes the red portions of Peder's red and blue suit and takes the black portions of his stealth suit and combines them together to make the red and black suit. Okay, that's everything on the suit itself. Next up, we get to see all of the spider symbols. We get front symbols and we get back symbols. So the first three are all original designs. The one that's on the final suit, one random design, and the symbol that was actually originally supposed to be on the suit before it was changed, which you can see in the concept art of the movie. Then we just get some back symbol versions of these symbols. Next, we see an MCU inspired symbol, which was another early spider design for this suit, which is in the concept art as well. The spider symbol from the red and black suit from Spider-Man Far From Home and No Way Home, the final swing suit spider symbol from No Way Home, and some back symbol versions of those. Lastly, the Raimi spider symbol from Tobey Maguire's movies, the original Scarlet spider symbol from the comics, and the symbol which originated from the Amazing Fantasy 15 comic, the Steve Ditko design. And then we get some back symbol versions of those as well. Next, we see a little piece of paper that has a drawing of the homemade suit from Spider-Man Homecoming, along with the spider symbol and web shooter. A note up the top that says Villains Fought, Slyde and Chameleon, Snordore and Shocker, with some drawings of them down below. If you notice, Slyde is written first because chronologically, Slyde is actually the first villain that Peder fights in this trilogy, as Chameleon drove off in his car before Peder could actually fight him. Speaking of Chameleon, Chameleon is actually scribbled out and below it says fake, because as we know, after Chameleon told his backstory, that wasn't actually Chameleon in the final battle of Spider-Man Preliminary. It was just one of his men using his technology to shapeshift to appear as Chameleon to trick Peder. Therefore, he was fake, and the backyard fight is actually the very first time that Peder has ever fought against Chameleon, which would explain why he seems so much stronger than he did in Preliminary. Chameleon's been working behind Peder's back the whole time, and a little drawing of Chameleon has been crossed out by Peder because 1, he was fake back then, so it's like he wasn't even a thing, and 2, Peder probably just did this out of rage after what Chameleon did to Joseph. Okay, Snordore is next because that's who he fought next chronologically, and then lastly it says Shocker, because if you know, Peder fought Shocker in the Spider-Man Christmas special. Even though the Christmas special isn't technically a part of the trilogy, I still like adding references to it because it makes the GPU, Gallery Productions universe, feel more connected. Okay, for the next note it says new laptop, because as you can see in Dimension Rift and Stealth Mission, Peder's laptop does have a cracked screen. Not only that, but this note is actually a little reference to the opening scene in Spider-Man PS4 where it shows a jar on Peder's desk with a note that says new laptop, and his laptop has a cracked screen as well. You can see a little hack screen thing going on in the laptop as well, which is also in Dimension Rift and Stealth Mission. The only reason why Peder doesn't have this laptop in Spider-Man Preliminary is because, well, that's the first film in the timeline. It was a few months prior to Stealth Mission, so Peter probably didn't even have the laptop yet, and the events of Stealth Mission and Dimension Rift are only like a week apart from each other, while Stealth Mission and Preliminary are like 3 months apart from each other. Alright, moving on. There's a note on there as well that says, get more pictures for Bugle. JJJ is angry, which means Peter has already been working for the Bugle for a while. We just didn't see any of that happening in the previous 2 films. But then finally we get to see Peter talking about the Bugle with Harry at the end of the film, and Peter is getting some photos of him fighting the thugs. Obviously Peter had no time to do this before because he's been busy dealing with Chameleon and Slyde and just dealt with Snordore a week prior, just like Peter said at the end of Dimension Rift. Well, I guess Spider-Man's just been on some secret missions lately, so I guess I just have to wait for him to be doing some standard crime in the city before I'm actually able to get up close and take any good photos. And the last thing on that note says, today, get electrical handcuffs for taser webs, which is soon to be scribbled out, and we see Peter doing this while he makes the new suit. Alright, so going down we see some web shooter designs and some spider eyes designs. We see the web shooter design that's on the final suit, the design from the Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit, the design from the Amazing Spider-Man 1 suit, and another original web shooter design, which if you look closely actually resembles the spider symbol on the final suit. Then for the eyes we see an MCU styled lens, a lens inspired by the Nicholas Hammond 1977 Spider-Man suit, a lens inspired by the 1978 Japanese Spider-Man TV series, and lastly a lens from the Tobey Maguire suit. The last thing out of these drawings is a cool little reference that's basically impossible to see, so I'll show you a picture of it in real life because it's at the very bottom and I don't even think you can see it in the film. It's a little note that says TJ Channels, name of new Peter and Joseph podcast. And as I stated earlier on in this video, TJ Channels is another Spider-Man fan film creator on YouTube whose voice you heard at the very start of the film, and who also voiced one of the thugs at the very end of the film. Also at the bottom of the note it says Impossible Darkness, with an arrow pointing to it saying name of other suit, possibly referring to the stealth suit because of the dark tone and colour. And if you don't know, Impossible Darkness is the name of one of TJ Channel's Spider-Man fan films, Spider-Man Impossible Darkness. So TJ, if you're watching right now, remember when I told you there was a tiny reference to you in this movie? Well, here it is. Hope you'll like it. Wow, if TJ Channels is a YouTuber that exists in this Spider-Man universe, TJ might have to sue Peter and Joseph for using his YouTube channel name for their podcast. I mean, it's not far-fetched, is it? If you've watched the Spider-Man Christmas special, you know that Owlboy Carson is a YouTuber that exists in the Spider-Man universe. Peter makes his new suit. This suit making montage is definitely my favourite one compared to the Spider-Man Preliminary one. The difference between the two is that in Preliminary we see Peter actually designing his new suit, then making it. But in Dimension Rift, he already has the design and he makes it straight away. I just enjoy the Dimension Rift one a lot more because I think it's shot better, it has nicer lighting, and the music makes it feel more powerful and motivational. Some details here and there. We can see some foam, some fabric, some threads, needles, buttons, tape, some puffy paint, which we see Peter use later on. Every material that Peter will need to make his new suit. You can also see this plastic Spider-Man mask on the right hand side.
But Peter's making it, okay. I see a face shell on the right.
It's kind of a face shell, but it's actually just a kid's plastic Spider-Man mask that I got when I was a lot younger, and I tried modifying it a tad because I was actually going to try and use it as a face shell for this suit before I got the one from Heroes Time, and it didn't work out well. Now, one thing I do want to point out about this suit making scene is that no, this isn't footage of me making the actual suit. This is footage of me pretending to make the suit. Like the parts where it shows Peter sticking on the spider symbol and adding the puffy paint and the black fabric tape. This is all just props and a fake suit, let's say. The whole suit was finished before this scene was filmed. The part where Peter shows up at the lair in the final battle was actually filmed before the suit making scene, funnily enough. But a fun little fact is that this suit making scene does actually replicate the way I made the suit in real life in some aspects. Here's some slight comparisons. So yeah, in the actual suit making video, these are clips sped up of months and months of hard work and patience, but the movie version is all shot more cinematically with thought out camera angles and lighting, and I'm also wearing a Spider-Man suit in it, so there is a difference, but it doesn't take away the fact that it does demonstrate the way I made the suit in real life in a similar way. If you want to see how the actual suit was made in real life, there's a full video on the channel all about that, so check it out if you want. When Peder brings out his new mask, we get a cool slight parallel to Spider-Man Preliminary, where he looks at the lens through the magnifying glass. Not only is it a parallel to Spider-Man Preliminary, but it's also a parallel to the opening scene of Spider-Man PS4, where you can also see Peder's mask underneath the magnifying glass. Also, in the same shot, when Peder moves his hand, you can see some Raimi Spider-Man lens frames on the right-hand side, as well as some white ones underneath, which were the original frame for the Scarlet Spider mask, which were later changed to be bigger and more comic accurate. Next, we see Peder placing the Edith glasses on this little stand, just like Spider-Man Preliminary, and you can see a cable running from it, also just like Spider-Man Preliminary. The glasses light up, and then the mask lens light up with the cable running from that as well, showing that the Edith network has been uploaded to the Spider-Man mask and lens heads-up display. This is basically a recreation of the scene from Preliminary where Peder does the same thing with his upgraded homemade suit. The cool thing about the Dimension Rift version though is that when the glasses light up, these are actually practical effects, believe it or not. Yep, I just placed 2 torches on the sides, angled them correctly, then added a fade transition to make it look like they gradually light up. Very simple tricks. Maybe if you have Edith glasses you want to include in your fan film, you can try this really cool practical effect as well. Although I don't think that this practical effect would work as well if you're walking around with the glasses on your head. It would usually only work if it's a still shot. Next, we see Peder working on his web shooters. This is another very similar shot to him working on his web shooters in Preliminary. But if you look closely, Peder solders a wire to the back end of the web shooters. Wire goes from web shooter to voltage tester, from voltage tester to laptop, and then from laptop to electrical handcuffs. Then we can see Peder typing some technical stuff on the laptop so we can hook the electricity of the handcuffs up to the web shooters for him to create taser webs. Now, I know if you were doing something like this in real life, it probably wouldn't work this way, but it doesn't matter. Who cares? It's a movie, this is fiction. It's fun to have an imagination, so all of you tech professionals out there, don't attack me for this, please. Okay, now, for the final suit. Peder has finished it and is ready to put it on. We get the shot of Peder looking at his suit design and then turning around immediately cutting to a shot of him already wearing it. Now this shot is direct inspiration from the Spider-Man PS4 game where Peder makes the anti-Ox suit for the final battle of the game. Anyway, so yes, the suit. It's red and black, not red and blue. And a lot of people actually think that this is supposed to resemble the red and black suit from Far From Home and No Way Home. And even though that suit is my favourite live-action Spider-Man suit, I actually didn't go in making this suit with that thought in my mind at all. I think it's because this suit was originally supposed to be red and blue, but got changed last minute due to being unable to find the right clothing for it. If you want to see more about that, watch the concept art video on the channel. But yeah, I do see why you guys thought it was supposed to be like that suit, and yeah, it is very much like that suit, unintentionally. Next, we get to see a heads-up display shot from the inside of the mask, and Edith says,
"You now have 20 more possible web shooter combinations, as well as many more features that you have left to discover."
Which is a reference to what Karen says in Spider-Man Homecoming after Peder and Ned hack the Stark suit.
You have 576 possible web shooter combinations.
Mr. Stark really overdid it.
So we get to the final battle, and when Peder is fighting Slyde, this is a callback to how their very first fight in Spider-Man Preliminary began. was actually my brother's idea, who plays Slyde, that we do something like this to make a cool callback to the film. Not only that, but it's in the exact same spot in front of the exact same caravan at the lair. This next detail is like the most unintended thing on the planet, so call it a stretch if you will, but honestly it's something I found really cool and kind of funny while editing and watching the battle back in my editing software. As I said, don't get mad at me if you think this is silly, but I just thought it was a really cool coincidence. So basically, when Peder is fighting Slyde, Peder quickly reacts by picking up a container to block his attack. Just like how Peder quickly reacts by webbing a hubcap from a car to block Chameleon's attack. And the funny thing is that the object that Peder uses to block Slyde's attack is yellow, which matches the colour of Slyde's accent on his suit and the colour of his super speed and attacks, the most recognisable thing about him. And the object that Peder uses to block Chameleon's attack is silver, which matches the colour of Chameleon's helmet, the most recognisable thing about him. As I said, super unintentional, but just a really cool coincidence. Next up, during the fight between Ben, Reilly and Snordore, we get this scene of Snordore teleporting behind Ben and attempting to get him in a chokehold, but Ben elbows him twice and gives him a big punch. This is a direct reference to the Spider-Man stealth mission final battle where Snordore does this to Peder. Both Spider-Men experienced this in their own final battle with their own Snordore. It's like it's always supposed to happen. But I do think that the Dimension Rift version is way better, and we've definitely gotten better at choreographing fight scenes. And just for some cool similarities for the end of their fight here, Ben throws Snordore down onto this metal, just like Snordore did to Ben earlier on in the fight. And Ben webs Snordore's hand on the wall, just like Peder did to Snordore in Stealth Mission. And the biggest parallel here is this whole scene between Ben and Snordore. Ben has knocked Snordore down and Snordore is lying up against a wall while Ben is crouched down having a chat with him, exactly like the way Peder and Snordore were in Spider-Man Stealth Mission. Only difference is Ben had to web up Snordore because he couldn't come to an agreement. Well, Peder didn't need to because he felt like he was able to convince Snordore, and because of that, Snordore was able to be the one who put a drop of serum in the thermal reactor and give Peder the serum himself. While Ben had to be the one to do it with his Snordore. As I said at the start of the video with their first fight, it just goes to show that the same events are occurring, just in different ways. The results of some situations will be the same, just in different ways. Just like at the end of the film, the Snordore variant finally agrees and Ben can see the good in him, and Snordore leaves through the portal in peace, and we see a close shot of Ben looking at the serum bottle, exactly like in Stealth Mission. Snordore leaves through the portal in peace, and we get a close-up shot of Peder looking at the serum bottle. So they were going to come to an agreement eventually. It just took a little bit longer for the Snordore variant to come to terms with Ben. Also, speaking of that serum shot, a cool little detail here is that it's like the same shot, but the serum bottles are a different shape, and the tag that says serum is sideways on one bottle, but is straight up on the other. Same with the thermal reactor. One has red stripes on it, but the other one does not. It's just to show it's a different universe. Like, it's even the same thing with the brick wall that both Snordore shoot their portal onto. This is the same wall, but one has drawings and paintings on it in one universe, but in the other universe the wall's completely blank. Obviously that was unintended because that was out of our control. We were shooting the scenes in a public space and things just happened to change. But it's still cool that it reflects exactly what I'm talking about. Different universes are supposed to be the same, but just have slightly different aspects to them. So during Peder and Chameleon's final standoff, the portal in the sky changes the environment, making the scenes feel more purple but less saturated. And during their fight, we get to see some little callbacks to other fight moves. Just like when Peder goes to web Chameleon, he catches the web and pulls Peder towards him, just like what the Snordore variant did to Ben Reilly at the start of the film. Another one is this move where Chameleon goes to stomp Peder with his foot, but Peder rolls out of the way, just like in the Spider-Man preliminary final battle. battle. And then we also get the shot, which is one of my favourite shots in the whole movie. This wide shot of Peter and Chameleon running towards each other, and you can see that big portal in the background. This shot is very reminiscent of the shot in No Way Home, where there's a wide shot of Peter and Green Goblin running towards each other. Not only that, but this whole final standoff is very, very much inspired by that final Green Goblin fight in No Way Home, and you can see that when you watch them side by side. Not only that, but in the No Way Home fight, there's a fight move where Peter whips Goblin's head down and knees him in the face. And there was actually a deleted clip from Dimension Rift where Peter does this to Chameleon in their final standoff.
Action.
After that, we get that Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker moment between Slyde and Peter, and Slyde turns to the good side, and the scene where Chameleon is saying,
"You pathetic, worthless piece of..."
is sort of inspired by the scene from The Amazing Spider-Man 2 when one of the Oscorp guys called Donald Mencken is yapping on to Harry and Electro, and then Electro just electrocutes him and falls to the ground.
You recalcitrant, unworthy, defective urch freaks.
Oh, God, I'm sorry. That's just not the answer we were looking for.
After Slyde turns, we get a shot of him powering up his glove and slowly walking towards Chameleon. Now, you guys know that Spider-Man fan film called Spider-Man Lotus. I'm sure all of you do. But I just want to say that I did watch it. I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but there were a lot of things I liked and there were a lot of things that I disliked. But that doesn't take away from the fact that there was actually a shot in that fan film that I used for inspiration for this shot of Slyde powering up his glove. And it's the shot where Peter goes to his or Harry's motel room and Peter pulls up his sleeve and the camera follows behind his hand while he gets his web shooter ready, and then there's Harry passed out on the couch. But yeah, anyway, I did really like that shot, so I thought it would be perfect to do something like that in the scene where Slyde switches teams. Really solid shot, loved it. After that, Peter says, "Wait, he's mine," and goes full rage on Chameleon, which is once again inspired by the final standoff between Peter and Goblin in No Way Home. And then there's a line that Peter says to Chameleon, which was a little bit inspired by what Tobey Maguire's Peter said to Green Goblin in Spider-Man 1.
You tried to kill Aunt May. You tried to kill Joseph.
You tried to kill Aunt May. You tried to kill Mary Jane.
Then Peter attaches a web onto Chameleon and tells Edith to activate the taser web.
Do it.
Do it. And this whole scene of Peter just electrocuting Chameleon, making him suffer, is another reference of that scene from Star Wars Return of the Jedi where Palpatine is constantly electrocuting Luke and Vader is just standing there watching. And you can see the light flashing and flickering on his helmet, just like in Dimension Rift where you can see the light flashing and flickering on Slyde while he's just watching. Not only that, but listen to the music in the background of this scene. I purposely made this scene have the same music that's in the scene where Chameleon is morphed as Peter, and in the same scene where Chameleon throws Peter out of the lair.
What? I tried to warn Peter multiple times. But he still just didn't want to listen.
This is to show that in this moment where Peder is making Chameleon suffer, that Peder has gone down a really dark route and it makes him look no better than Chameleon, so I think having that same music works perfectly for this. After Peder electrocutes Chameleon, Reilly steps in and tries to calm Peder down, sort of how Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man calms down Tom Holland's Spider-Man after he almost killed Green Goblin in No Way Home. Only difference is that since Tobey and Tom's Spider-Man had already met and had a conversation about not killing earlier on in the film, Tobey didn't need to say anything to Tom. But in Dimension Rift, Reilly tried his hardest to convince Peder. During Ben's talk to Peder, we hear more about Ben's past. And yeah, as I said earlier on in the video, if we did a short film about it, you could imagine what it would be like. After Reilly convinces Peder, the portal grows bigger and multiversal cracks start emerging out of it. And yes, it's pretty obvious that this scene was hugely inspired by No Way Home.
So, how are we gonna stop this exactly? Well, one of the guys up at S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters said that they were going to try and find a way to stop it, but I mean, look at it. There's no chance.
Is that happening, or am I dying? Oh yeah, no, that's happening. That's real.
Are there people in the sky?
I gotta go.
Yeah, I got it.
You okay?
I think mostly the second half of this film was pretty inspired by No Way Home, but original enough to the point where you can differentiate the two. Next, we get the return of Snordore. Him and the Snordore variant were the ones who accidentally opened this portal by opening too many portals in their own universe and then opening one at the same time, which ultimately resulted in tearing a hole in reality and the two universes interlinked with each other. Similar to how in the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer, there was a cut scene from the movie where Nick Fury says this to Peder.
World Beck is from Earth, just not ours. The snap tore a hole in our dimension.
In the trailer for Far From Home, Fury, well, Talos, says the snap, the Thanos snap from Infinity War, tore a hole in their dimension. Now, obviously all of this was fake and was just all a part of Mysterio's plan to make everyone believe that's how the multiverse worked in the MCU, but in reality it wasn't. If you want to understand how the multiverse actually works in the MCU, just watch Loki. But for my version of the multiverse, two universes collided because of the events of Stealth Mission and what happened in Ben Reilly's universe.
Alright, so your buddy Snordore may have created way too many portals whilst travelling from one world to the other. What are you saying? This shouldn't even be possible. But over the past week, the portals that he created basically tore a gateway in our universe, causing reality to collapse. Well, it hasn't collapsed yet, obviously, but it will eventually if you don't help us. Okay. When your universe's Snordore opened up too many portals, it interlinked with the Snordore from my universe, which tore open the gateway, and he refused to give up the serum. A much more aggressive Snordore that is now here.
Multiple universes can just thrive just fine. It's just dangerous to visit other universes because, well, this can happen. Yeah, that's just my own take on the multiverse, instead of it being like, oh, the multiverses are collapsing because you broke a canon event, or you've been arrested by the Time Variance Authority because you were supposed to trip on that rock and die, but you didn't, type of thing. When Snordore arrives, we get a very similar entrance to his entrance in the Spider-Man preliminary post-credit scene, which just shows him coming after the serum, just to connect the film to Spider-Man Stealth Mission, except in the post-credit scene, the entrance is darker and more villainous, and in Dimension Rift, it's much more heroic. And if you notice, Snordore's suit actually has a very slight difference to the previous films. He has some red accents on his crown as well as on his jacket. This was an idea of mine for a while because I just wanted to give his suit a tiny little upgrade. But from what I remember, I'm pretty sure my brother actually came up with this really cool idea, which is the reason he has these red accents on his suit is to honor Spider-Man, to honor his colors after he helped Snordore save his world and his population of people. Which in a way, Peder sort of repays that to him by saying,
"You're gonna be remembered for what you did today. You're gonna be known as the universe's hero."
And yeah, I think that's actually the perfect reason for him to have added these red colors to his suit.
You saved my world once before, so I needed to save yours.
We get this epic shot of Snordore closing the gateway. And him closing the gateway is supposed to be sort of similar to how in No Way Home, Doctor Strange is attempting to close the multiversal cracks in the sky after they start growing bigger. But the biggest difference is that this is a villain that has redeemed himself by fixing the mess that he accidentally created and is becoming a savior of Peder's world and potentially Ben's world as well. That's why there's so much heroic music and awesome cinematics. Basically, Snordore coming back to save the world was mostly my dad's idea, since he plays Snordore, and thought of a heroic send-off for the character, and I worked off of that idea of my own vision in mind for it, and here we are. While this is happening, we get a brotherly moment between Peder and Ben, similar to No Way Home with the 3 Peders, and Peder thanks Ben for snapping him out of the rage, but he does mention this too.
"You stopped me from electrocuting Chameleon, but from electrocuting him, I did destroy his new tech in the process."
Which was something that Peder was planning to do earlier on in the film.
"What I need you to do is to go back into his lair and see if you're able to find those handcuffs, because I'm pretty sure that the amount of power that's in them should be enough to shut down his new technology."
So Peder did successfully destroy Chameleon's upgraded morphing technology to prevent him from hurting anyone else and morphing into anyone else, like he originally planned. After that, Peder has a chat with Slyde, and Slyde says he'll become a better person, and then Slyde gives Chameleon the "you're done" look and speeds off into the distance. Then, we get the goodbye between Ben and Peder, similar to the 3 Peders in No Way Home. Both Peder and Ben have to live with saying goodbye after they've had pretty much just met and made a small bond. They have to say goodbye. And yes, this next part is very, very much inspired by No Way Home as well. As the gateway closes, it takes Ben and the Snordore variant with it, taking them back to their own universe, and they fade away just like the villains in No Way Home and the other Spider-Men. Snordore uses all of his power to save the universe, and we get a line from both Peder and Ben that they both say to their own variants of Snordore.
"You're gonna be remembered for what you did today. You're gonna be known as the universe's hero."
Now, take this. Once this is all over, bring it back to your people and cure them. But you don't have to mention me.
Ben and Peder are telling their Snordores that they are the ones to save everyone, and it really just shows how selfless Spider-Man as a character is, including Scarlet Spider in this film. Even though Ben Reilly was the one really trying to save Snordore's world and his own world with the serum, Ben really wanted Snordore to be the one to tell his people that he saved them and Ben's world. And with Peder, even though he's the main character and he tries everything in his power to save his friends, family, and stop the villains, he tells Snordore that he's the one that saves the world, that he's the hero. Peder knows he's made lots of mistakes throughout this time, and he wants to let Snordore know that he's the real saviour of the multiverse, not Peder. So yeah, even though the Spider-Men are the heroes of the movie, they definitely show their selflessness in these moments by letting the Snordores redeem themselves. And we sort of get a parallel here. Snordore's very last line in Stealth Mission was,
"Thank you, Spider-Man."
And his very last line in Spider-Man Dimension Rift was,
"Sailor, Spider-Man."
And he fades off into particles, and people probably thought this was a reference to the snap, but it's actually a reference to how Odin died in Thor Ragnarok. Okay, so after that big climactic final battle, we get some closure, and there's a Daily Bugle newspaper front cover stuck to the wall, and the headline says, "Pre-villain makes heroic sacrifice," with a photo of Snordore. The Daily Bugle logo is actually the one from the Tobey Maguire movies, but with a small part of it removed just to make it a little bit different, and the font for the words Daily Bugle has been changed to a different font to be a little more original as well. But I think the biggest details are these little headings at the very top. The one on the left says, "From black and yellow to white and green," which is obviously referring to Slyde. His suit was black and yellow, and then after becoming pretty much a superhero, he changed his suit to a white and green one, which means someone had already spotted him and taken photos of him helping people before we see him in the post-credit scene. But the most interesting one is the heading on the right, which says, "Shocker, found guilty of working for Chameleon." Now, if you guys have watched the Spider-Man Christmas special, you'll know that Shocker is the main villain of that film. And basically the plot line was that Shocker was coming to Peder's house to steal some presents because he didn't get any. And yes, that's a very childish motive, but Peder believes him anyway because, well, Peder's never met Shocker and just believes this is just some random goon with some tech. Peder ends up defeating him very easily, so it would make sense for Peder not to think that Shocker has any connections to more powerful villains. But this was never the case. Shocker actually worked for Chameleon, and as we know, at the start of Dimension Rift, what did Chameleon do? Well, he tried to murder Aunt May as a warning for Peder. And this was supposedly Chameleon's first attempt at warning Peder, trying to get Peder to join his team. But I'll reveal right now that Chameleon's actual first attempt to kill Aunt May was by using Shocker, by secretly sending him to Peder's house, working behind the scenes. How else would Shocker know where Peder lives? And by the end of the Christmas special, it's assumed that Shocker gets turned into S.H.I.E.L.D, and there's a 3-day time jump from the Christmas special to Dimension Rift. And in that time, Shocker would have gave up and ended up confessing that he did in fact work for Chameleon and was going to attempt to murder Aunt May. The whole "I want your present because Santa didn't get me any" was just a silly little cover-up, and the attempt failed. So Chameleon finally came out of his shell and did a Thanos.
Fine. I'll do it myself.
Morphed as Peder and attempted to murder Aunt May himself, but obviously that didn't work out either because don't mess with the Parkers. But yeah, it's confirmed, Shocker did in fact work for Chameleon. And fun fact, there was a scrapped line from the script of Dimension Rift where Chameleon was actually going to mention Shocker and talk about the events that happened in the Christmas special. Hell, I had slight plans where I was thinking about Shocker showing up in the final battle, but I thought that it was a little too much. Shocker was arrested, never to be seen again, and if he was in the final battle, it wouldn't have made much sense. These three villains have a much higher purpose than Shocker and had stronger connections to the main characters. So if Shocker was there, he'd feel out of place. Not only that, but my brother played Shocker in the Christmas special and he also plays Slyde, so it would be way too difficult to even make that work. So it was entirely scrapped, and I thought it works a bit better as a little Easter egg on the newspaper instead. Sometimes it just flows better that way. Last little detail about Shocker that I want to talk about is that in the scene where Peder and Chameleon are chatting in the garage earlier on in Dimension Rift, as you know, Chameleon reveals that it wasn't actually him in the final battle of Spider-Man Preliminary. He simply just states that it was one of his men, using a prototype of his new technology to test Peder's ability, but Chameleon doesn't specify which one of his men was actually fighting Peder in that final battle. You would just assume it would have just been one of these two guys. These are Chameleon's guards, his henchmen that he has in Spider-Man Preliminary. But if you watch back that final battle, he's wearing these white accented gauntlet pieces on his wrists, and he didn't actually have these at all throughout Preliminary up until the final battle. And if you've watched the Christmas special, Shocker has these exact same gauntlets on only one of his wrists. Now, this is not something I planned at all, but guys, let me know if this could be a cool retcon. What if this guard that's disguising as Chameleon in the final battle is actually Shocker using the tech? What if this was the guard that he was talking about? I mean, it could work because he technically was one of Chameleon's men that we just didn't know about, and the white gauntlets were originally just to be a part of a slight suit upgrade. But what if I retconned it to be Shocker? That would be a really cool connection, but the only thing that sort of makes it fall out of line is that he does get locked up at S.H.I.E.L.D. HQ, and Shocker probably wouldn't stand a chance trying to break his way out of a highly protected S.H.I.E.L.D. HQ prison cell whilst also being disguised as Chameleon at the same time. So in a way, the retcon works, but that is the only thing that makes it fall out of line. If you guys have any ideas on a way it would work perfectly, I'd love to hear your ideas down in the comments below. And if I read one that actually sounds good and makes sense, I may actually retcon it with your idea in there. It's sort of a 50-50 at the moment, but it would be a missed opportunity to make that guard in the final battle be Shocker. Because, as we know, Chameleon's 2 other guards got electrocuted by Joseph, but one of them could have woken up and disguised as Chameleon. Who knows? I want to hear your ideas in the comments, I'd love to hear them. We finally get a good ending between Ben Reilly and the Snordore variant, just like Peder and Snordore's good ending and stealth mission, and it's at the exact same spot, of course. And of course we got that parallel shot of the serum bottle, and Ben exits out of frame, just like Peder as well. And instead of Peder exiting the frame and it cutting to Peder and May watching Royd news about Snordore, it's Ben exiting the frame and it fading to Peder and May once again watching Royd news, but it's not about Snordore, it's about Chameleon. And the headline says, Dmitry Smerdyakovs, I don't actually know if I'm pronouncing that properly, aka the Chameleon behind bars, using his real name. Chameleon has his head shaved and he's wearing an orange shirt, and on the shirt, if you look closely, it actually says Raft. And if you know, in the Marvel Universe, the Raft is a super strong facility and prison in the ocean where they keep supervillains locked up. A special prison for them where they can't break out. It's usually a place for super villains, and from what we know from these films, Chameleon doesn't have super strength, but he is very dangerous still. Although, Chameleon did seem super strong and tough in this movie. I wonder why. And now, Peder and Joseph's goodbye scene. Literally right as Peder starts trying to make things right, he says he'll do everything on his own now to protect him and May. And Joseph hits Peder with the news that he's moving out of state because his parents decided it's too dangerous for him after he got grazed in the arm by the bullet of Chameleon's gun. Fun fact, if you've watched the concept art video for Dimension Rift, you'll know that Joseph was originally supposed to die in the movie. Chameleon was going to murder him in that scene where he's morphed as Peder. I changed it because 1, I didn't want it to feel too much like No Way Home with Aunt May's death, and 2, sometimes a goodbye scene can actually hit harder, and it's not as cliche, especially for a Spider-Man film. He still loses his best friend, just not to death, and I think it makes the storyline feel a bit different as well. After Joseph leaves, Peder sits down and sees the same note that Joseph left for Peder when he gave him the Edith glasses back in Spider-Man Preliminary, and now the note is a little bit scrunched up, but Peder has just kept this on his desk as a little reminder of him. Peder picks up the glasses and that Spider-Man ringtone plays, and who is the one calling Peder?
Hey Pete, it's Harry.
Harry Osborn. We finally get introduced to Harry in this Spider-Man universe. There he is, and he's wearing a green buttoned up shirt. It's very, very dark and desaturated green, but it is green. And who else is green? Green Goblin, of course. And no, this isn't setting up for anything to do with Green Goblin, okay? It wasn't even planned. It's just a coincidence that his shirt is green, but it works out in a cool way anyway. So, Harry does mention Joseph in this scene, and Joseph also mentions Harry at the beginning of the film. This means they were both friends as well, and they were originally a friend group as a trio, but now they're split. So now Peder is with Harry and Joseph is the one that's far away, but before it was the other way around. And we now know that Harry doesn't actually know that Peder is Spider-Man. Joseph would have found out Peder was Spider-Man in the time that Harry was away, which was before the events of Spider-Man Preliminary, and Peder probably doesn't want to tell Harry his identity because he now knows what will happen if people know he's Spider-Man, so he wants to keep it a secret from Harry. Harry mentions Oscorp and seeing if Peder would want to work there and do some fun projects. Sort of how in Insomniac's Spider-Man 2, Harry shows Peder the new office at the Emily May Foundation. Not only that, but it's also kind of similar to Spider-Man 1, how Harry asks Peder if he's looking for any jobs.
Hey Pete, you're probably looking for a job now, right? Dad, maybe you can help him out.
No, I appreciate it, but I'll be fine.
No problem.
I'll make a few calls.
Anyway, about the Daily Bugle, Harry asks, "You still taking pictures of Spider-Man?" And Peder says, "When I can, when he's around." So yeah, this confirms that Peder has been working for the Bugle for a while, even before the events of Preliminary. Harry then asks,
You know what I've always wondered?
Why only Spider-Man?
What do you mean?
I don't know. Isn't there any other superheroes that Jonah would want photos of?
Not that I know of. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there are other heroes out there. I mean, there's plenty of villains, so maybe. I don't know.
Jonah always wants to target Spider-Man, but who knows, maybe he'll want photos of Slyde now, considering he's now technically a superhero. That's what this scene was actually sort of hinting at. Peter runs off and Harry says,
Classic Pete.
Yep, Harry knows his best friend very well. This line just had to be in here. Then we get to see these two thugs, who I mentioned earlier, played by the Snordores, but voiced by Landon Carson, Lucas's brother, and Ted Lake, TJ Channels. And they're also wearing Spider-Man's recognisable colours, red and blue. Spider-Man swoops in with his camera, ready to take some pictures of himself fighting some thugs. Spidey has a little fight with the thugs, and one of the thugs gets up and says, "This is the end for you, Spider-Man." And Spidey replies with,
The end? I'm just getting started.
Which that line, yes, is showing that Spidey didn't even break a sweat fighting those two and he's just getting started. It doesn't set up anything for the future necessarily, but it does leave the door open for more possible projects. Not saying it'll actually happen, but it's an ending that makes the ending feel like an ending, but it also leaves the door open for the future if we decide to do any more Spider-Man fan films. Alright, so I'm going to skip the stop motion credits for a moment and go to the two post-credit scenes first, and then we'll come back to the credits. I'll leave that for last. So the first post-credit scene, it cuts straight back to the fight scene between Spider-Man and the thugs, and Spidey tases one of the thugs, but the other one comes in and pushes Spidey away. And right as one of the thugs is about to punch Spidey, Slyde comes in to help and says,
"Hey Spidey, need a hand?"
Instead of saying,
"Hey Spidey, did you miss me?"
Cool little parallel, and he shows up in a brand new white and green suit.
Your new suit looks sick, by the way. I'm kind of jealous. I'm even more jealous of your suit now.
This white and green suit is something I really wanted to do for a post-credit scene, because if you didn't know, this is directly based off of his original suit from the comics, the white and green one, and it keeps the same style as the previous suit as well. Now, the white and green one is usually the one he uses when he's the villain in the comics, but for this instance, I think it works perfectly for him becoming a superhero. But yeah, Spidey and Slyde run off to fight the thugs, and Slyde now has green super speed instead of yellow to match the green accents on his suit. So the second credits cut to a second post-credit scene at Chameleon's lair, and at the bottom it says, "Meanwhile in another universe." So we're seeing an alternate universe version of the lair, and this version of Chameleon is watching Spider-Man Dimension Rift on a TV. He's watching the scene where Slyde betrayed him, and he says,
"What? It wasn't supposed to end like this!"
and starts throwing objects and tools at the TV. So maybe in this universe, maybe Chameleon was a villain and got out of jail and they made a movie about him. Or maybe this isn't Chameleon and it's just some fan of Chameleon watching Dimension Rift in this universe. Who knows? The scene was mostly for a gag, but my brother said to me, maybe it's the same version of Chameleon that plays Five Nights at Freddy's on his gaming channel, the Chameleon Gaming 65.
And I will see you next time when I play some Fortnite Battle Royale.
So here we are, the final part of this video, the stop motion credits. And there is a lot to go through here, so let's break down everything in the credits. So right off the bat, the background is black and red, which represents the colours of the red and black Spider-Man suit. Next, we can see the Spider-Man red and black suit glove, the spider symbol, Spider-Man himself in the bottom right, the Edith glasses at the top, which is shown up close later in the credits, Snordore's glove shooting a laser, and the serum bottle from Stealth Mission. After that, the camera zooms in and says directed by Justin Bale, and we see a Spider-Man head roll past, a Scarlet spider head, Chameleon, Slyde, the Snordore variant, and Snordore. The other thing is all of the webs that you can see around the page, which is on every background in the credits. As it transitions to the next section, the transition is actually the upgraded red and blue homemade suit spider symbol, and each transition is actually different every time. There's a Spider-Man mask based off of the red and blue suit and the red and black suit, a Scarlet spider mask, spider symbols based off of Peder's suits and the Scarlet spider suit, and lastly 3 different coloured web transitions. The next section, the background colours, are black and blue, sort of to represent the colour of the Snordore variant and the colour of his powers, because we can see Scarlet Spider in the Snordore variant. We can also see the multiversal gateway, the Scarlet Spider symbol, Scarlet Spider's glove with a more comic accurate web shooter on the wrist, the Earth 94 thermal reactor, and you can't see in this shot, but there is the Earth 94 serum bottle as well, which you can see later on in the credits. As the credit says, co-directed by Geordie Keys and David Bale, little drawings of the Spider-Man red and black suit, mask and symbol swoop in. The colour scheme for the background for the next section is purple and blue, which represents the colour of the Spider-Man logo for this film, as well as the colours throughout the film, like the multiversal gateway, Snordore's lasers and portals, the purple tinge of the final battle and more. But the pattern of the background is like glitchy and pixelated, which represents the glitching of the Snordore variant's portal and the glitching of Chameleon's technology. So every little sort of Easter egg we can see on the background is Slyde, the glove of the red and blue upgraded homemade suit, Chameleon's gun, the stealth suit, both red and blue homemade suits, Chameleon, the spider logo of the red and blue upgraded homemade suit. Then, as it says, written by Justin Bale, we get a little animation of Peder changing from his red and blue suit to his red and black suit. As it goes to each section, it's a loop of those three same backgrounds, but sometimes they're flipped or turned sideways. This next section, we see the first homemade Spider-Man suit mask, the Scarlet Spider mask from Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Chameleon's helmet from Spider-Man Preliminary, Slyde's helmet from Preliminary, a Snordore variant portal, hence the little glitchy effect on it, and original Snordore's glove. A cool little detail about the animation here, the original Snordore glove object leaves with Peder's mask because they're from the same universe, so they leave together, and the Snordore variant portal leaves with the Scarlet Spider mask because they are from the same universe, so they leave together, and then Chameleon and Slyde leave at the same time as well. For the next credit, it shows a Scarlet Spider mask and spider symbol. Next credit is a little animation of the Spider-Man and Chameleon pointing at each other when Chameleon is morphed as Spider-Man, like in the movie, and then Chameleon changes back to his normal self and points his gun. Then we get to see the Spider-Man stealth suit and mask, the Scarlet Spider 3 suit that we get to see in the Insomniac game, Chameleon's helmet from the 2017 show, as well as Slyde's helmet from the 2017 Spider-Man show, and then the Snordore variant's glove swoops in and punches Spidey and Scarlet Spider out of the frame, and the original Snordore's portal comes in, hence no glitchy effect, and sucks Chameleon and Slyde into the vortex of it. Next, we see Spidey swing past the screen in his dismantled red and blue suit, which I like to call it, and then Chameleon's car zooms past the screen. Next, we see a little scene recreation of the scene from the Slyde fight, where Slyde is speeding super fast around Spidey like a vortex. Now we get into the cast, and first is me. Most of the cast members' photos are taken either from the actual footage, behind the scenes, or bloopers. Anyway, so as Peder is centered in the screen, we see the homemade suit mask, the stealth suit mask, Miles Morales from the Spider-Verse films, Spider-Man 2099, another Miles Morales one from either the comics or games, and just a classic Spidey mask which morely represents Peder's red and blue suit. And the masks leave the shot like a caterpillar. Then we see an assembly of the red and blue suit, which then gets replaced with the red and black suit, and Peder webs off screen. Next is Joseph, and we see a little page with the red and black suit that says new suit, which represents the new suit design in the movie, a first aid kit with a bandage, which represents the bandage on Joseph's arm after getting shot, a fingerless glove which represents Joseph's gloves like the gear he wears in the film, and then we see Joseph's binoculars and the electrical handcuffs. Next is Aunt May, and we get to see a cup of coffee, the peanut butter cookie, Aunt May's radio, Aunt May's glasses, and then the shovel that she uses in the film to bonk Chameleon's helmet. Next is Scarlet Spider, and we see the Scarlet Spider mask from the movie, the one from Across the Spider-Verse or the comics, the Scarlet Spider cane mask from the comics, the mask of the villain Chasm, where Scarlet Spider transforms into a villain in one of the comics, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and then the Scarlet Spider 3 mask from the Insomniac game. And after that, we see a little animation of Ben Reilly chasing after the Snordore variant through the portal, just like at the very start of the film, and Ben Reilly then webs off screen as well. Next is original Snordore, and we get to see Snordore's glove, portal, the serum, the thermal reactor, and his his mask. And then all of the items exit the screen by getting sucked into the little portal, and after that we get a little animation recreating the scene where Snordore is closing the gateway and Snordore exits the frame by shooting a portal and leaving. After that, we get Harry Osborn. We get a little bow tie with some money to show how the Osborns are rich. Green Goblin from the comics. Agent Venom, little reference to how Harry becomes Agent Venom in the Spider-Man 2 game. One of Green Goblin's pumpkin bombs from the Tobey Maguire movies, and an Oscorp Industries logo. Then we get the Snordore variant, and his items are basically just the same as the original Snordore, except they're from his universe. His glove, his version of the thermal reactor and the serum, a portal but it's glitchy as stated before, and his helmet. And then after that we get a little animation of him pairing up his glove, which he does numerous times throughout the film, and of course he leaves through his portal as well, except there's little glitchy pieces on it to mimic that first portal he creates at the very start of the film. Next is Phil Coulson and Slyde, and obviously they're here at the same time because both characters are played by my brother. So for Phil Coulson, we see the S.H.I.E.L.D cap that he wears, the car that he drives, his tie, the little diagram that has Snordore on it when he's explaining the portal to Peder, and a S.H.I.E.L.D logo. And he exits the shop by putting his cap and tie on and driving off in the car to introduce us properly to Slyde, just like in the film itself. For Slyde, we get to see his helmet from Dimension Rift, helmet from Preliminary, two of his helmets from the comics, and the helmet from the 2017 TV show. And obviously the white helmet is what his new white suit is based off of, as I stated earlier. After that, his suit from Preliminary gets formed into the shot, which is then replaced by the formation of his black and yellow suit. After we see all of that, Slyde speeds out of the frame just like he does all the time throughout the movie. And finally, for the main cast, we get Chameleon. And we get to see his helmet from Dimension Rift, his helmet from Preliminary, 2017 TV show, and two of his looks from the comics. Then we see the formation of his suit from Preliminary, which is then replaced by his Dimension Rift look by using glitchy pieces. And his head takes a second to glitch because it first glitches from Spider-Man to Slyde and then finally Chameleon. After that, he glitches and disappears just like in the film, and then Chameleon rolls out of the frame. For the cast members for Edith and the news reporter, we see the Edith glasses and Aunt May's little radio. For the cast members for the bystanders, in the scene where Spider-Man is looking up at the portal, we get a little animation recreating that very scene. For the thugs, we see little drawings of them down in the bottom right, and lastly, the transition to the last shot is both Peder and Ben Reilly's spider symbols crossing the screen together, and we see the Spider-Man Dimension Rift logo with the backgrounds changing. The very last thing that I'll point out is the credits music. So for the second set of credits, the first music that plays is the music that plays when Slyde turns to the good side, which is fitting because it plays after the first post-credit scene where Slyde returns in his new suit and becomes a hero. And the second track that plays is Habanero, not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but it plays in the scene where Joseph is looking for the handcuffs, and I think it was just a funny thing to add for a gag for the credits. Now for the stop motion credits music, it's a track called I Will Be the Best by NEFFEX, and it's a very motivational song that I think really fits Spider-Man's character and sort of the film itself as well. I'm not going to break down the lyrics, so if you want to listen to it, I'll leave the song in the description, but a cool unintentional thing about the credits with that music is that some of the lyrics do match with what's on screen at some points. For example, the part where Scarlet, Spider and the Snordore variant jump through the portal, it has this lyric at the same time. Sort of showing the journey Ben went through to get to this point that he is now through that first portal. When Snordore comes on screen, the lyric says, sort of to show that his destiny was to sacrifice himself in the end to save the multiverse, which is then followed by I will be the best. Yeah, the world will know my name. In the final act, Snordore shows the best version of himself, and Peder lets Snordore know he's going to be remembered for what he did that day. The world will know his name, and it shows that same recreation on screen as these lyrics are playing. With the Snordore variant, there are a few lyrics there as well, one of them being create a little bit of energy. it plays that lyric exactly when he opens that glitchy portal, creating energy, so the lyric kind of matches. Some of the lyrics match on screen while others match sort of what's happening in the film. As I said, there's probably more, but these are the best matching ones and the ones I think are actually worth listing here. Okay, well that is literally everything in this film that I can point out. I can't think of anything else, any more Easter eggs, references or details. I don't think there's any more than that. I mean, if I actually somehow missed something in my own film, please let me know in the comments, but that's everything, I'm sure of it. Anyway, I really hope you all enjoyed this giant breakdown of Spider-Man Dimension Rift, and please let me know what you thought of it in the comments, and also tell me which Easter egg or reference was your favourite, and also let me know which cool little detail was your favourite. I've been working on this video for almost 3 weeks now, hence the gap between the uploads. But yeah, that's everything I got. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a great day.